Callum Reed checked his watch for the third time,
Your wife
wondering
knows
if he'd
about
been
us.
stood up. The upscale cafe was busy with the lunch crowd. Professionals grabbing quick meals between meetings. Exactly the kind of place his assistant had suggested. For what she'd insisted was an important meeting with someone who needs to thank you personally. At 34, Callum was the CEO of Reed Industries, a manufacturing company his grandfather had founded that he'd modernized and expanded into green technology. He was successful, wealthy, and perpetually single, despite his assistant's increasingly creative attempts to set him up. When she'd mentioned this meeting, Callum had assumed it was another thinly veiled blind date. He was considering leaving when a young woman approached his table. She was striking, with blonde hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, wearing a professional outfit, cream blouse and red skirt, that suggested she'd come from an office. But what caught Callum's attention was her expression. Nervous, emotional, determined. "Callum Reed?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "That's me," he replied, standing automatically. "Are you my mystery appointment?" "I am," she said, extending her hand. "My name is Sophia Lancaster. Thank you for agreeing to meet me." As they sat down, Callum studied her face, trying to place her. She looked vaguely familiar, but he couldn't identify where they might have met. "I have to be honest," Callum said. "My assistant set this up and was very mysterious about it. She said someone needed to thank me personally, but I have no idea what for." "Have we met before?" Sophia took a deep breath, and Callum saw her eyes glisten with unshed tears. "We've met, though you wouldn't remember it. It was 10 years ago. I was 14 and you saved my life." Callum felt his heart skip. "I don't understand." 10 years ago, you were 24, just starting to take over your family's company," Sophia began. "It was late at night, raining, and you were driving home from the office. Do you remember stopping at a bridge?" A memory flickered, vague and distant. Callum had tried to forget that night, had filed it away as one of those strange, intense moments that felt almost like a dream. "I remember stopping my car," he said slowly. "There was someone on the bridge railing." "That was me," Sophia said, tears now flowing freely. "I was 14 years old and I was going to jump. I'd climbed up on the railing and I was seconds away from letting go. Then you stopped your car and got out in the pouring rain." Callum's memory sharpened. He remembered now, a young girl in a school uniform soaked through, standing on the wrong side of the railing. The terror he'd felt, the careful approach, the desperate attempt to talk her down. "You were just a kid," Callum whispered. "You looked so small and scared." "I was terrified," Sophia admitted. "I'd been bullied mercilessly at school for 2 years. My parents were going through a bitter divorce and using me as ammunition against each other. I felt invisible and worthless, and I'd convinced myself the world would be better without me. That night I decided to end it." She leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table. "Then you appeared. This stranger in an expensive suit, getting soaked in the rain, telling me that you understood what it felt like to be hopeless. Do you remember what you said to me?" Callum thought back. "I told you that I'd felt the same way when I was younger. That I'd lost my parents in a car accident when I was 16 and wanted to give up. That life had seemed unbearable until someone told me that pain is temporary but death is permanent." "You talked to me for over an hour," Sophia said, "standing in the rain, completely calm, like you had nowhere else to be. You didn't lecture me or tell me my problems were small. You treated me like an adult, like my pain was real and valid. And finally you said something that changed everything." "What did I say?" "You said, 'I don't know your name, and after tonight we'll never see each other again. But I need you to know that your life has value, even if you can't see it right now. Someone, somewhere, needs you to survive tonight. Your future self needs you to be brave for just a little longer. Can you be brave for one more day, just one?" Callum felt his throat tighten. He'd said those words because they were what someone had once said to him, words that had kept him alive during his darkest moment. "I was brave for one more day," Sophia continued, "and then another, and another. You called the crisis hotline for me that night, waited with me until someone came. You made me promise to go to therapy, to give life one more chance, I remember," Callum said quietly. "The counselor arrived and you left in their car. I never knew what happened to you after that. I tried to follow up, but patient confidentiality meant I couldn't get information. I went into intensive therapy, Sophia said. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. My parents finally realized how serious things had gotten and stopped using me in their fights. I transferred schools, made new friends, learned to see myself differently. It wasn't easy or quick, but I survived. Because a stranger cared enough to stand in the rain and convince me my life was worth living. She pulled out her phone and showed him photos. I graduated high school with honors. Got accepted to Northwestern. Graduated last month with a degree in psychology. I'm starting a master's program in the fall to become a therapist for teens dealing with mental health crises. Because of you. Callum looked at the photos of a confident young woman in a graduation gown, surrounded by smiling family, living a life that almost wasn't. Sophia, I'm so glad you survived, that you thrived, but I didn't do anything special. I just couldn't drive away. You did do something special, Sophia insisted, leaning close and lowering her voice so only he could hear. I'm just here to say thank you. Thank you for seeing me that night, for treating my pain as real, for giving me permission to be brave for just one more day. You gave me a life, Callum. Every good thing that's happened since then exists because you stopped your car on that bridge. Callum felt tears in his own eyes now. I'm so proud of you. For fighting, for healing, for turning your pain into purpose. They talked for another hour. Sophia told him about her plans to work with at-risk teens, to be for others what he'd been for her. Callum shared more of his own story, the grief and depression that had nearly consumed him after his parents died, the person who'd saved him. It was my grandfather, Callum explained. He told me about losing his wife young, about how close he'd come to giving up. He said he survived by helping others, by turning his pain into purpose. That's why he built this company, to create jobs and opportunities for people who needed a second chance. And that's why you continued his legacy, Sophia said with understanding. I've tried, Callum admitted, though sometimes I wonder if I'm really making a difference or just making money. You made a difference to me, Sophia said firmly. The biggest difference possible. As they stood to leave, Sophia pulled an envelope from her bag. I wrote you a letter. I've actually written you dozens over the years, but never sent them because I didn't know how to find you. This one is different. Read it when you have time. After Sophia left, Callum sat back down and opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter several pages long. Sophia detailed the past 10 years. The hard work of therapy, the moments she'd wanted to give up but remembered his words, the day she decided to become a therapist herself. She wrote about her graduation, her family healed and whole, her friends who'd become like family. But the final paragraph made Callum's breath catch. You told me that someone, somewhere, needed me to survive that night. You were right. Last year I was working a crisis hotline as part of my training. A girl called, 16 years old, standing on the same bridge where you found me. She was ready to jump. I talked to her for 90 minutes, and I used your words. I told her to be brave for one more day. She's alive because of what you taught me. Her survival is your legacy, too. I'm writing to tell you that the ripples from your kindness are still spreading, touching lives you'll never meet. Thank you for teaching me that one person can make all the difference. Callum sat in that cafe long after closing time, the staff too polite to ask him to leave. He called his assistant and asked how Sophia had found him. She tracked me down through LinkedIn, his assistant explained. Said she'd been searching for you for years. When she told me the story, I knew you'd want to meet her. Was I wrong to set it up without telling you? No, Callum said. You were absolutely right. That meeting changed something fundamental in Callum. He'd been moving through life focused on business metrics and financial success, measuring his worth in quarterly reports. But Sophia's visit reminded him that real impact isn't always measurable in spreadsheets. He established a foundation through Reed Industries focused on mental health support for teens and young adults. He funded crisis counseling programs, school mental health initiatives, and training for people like Sophia who were dedicating their lives to saving others. And he started volunteering at a crisis hotline himself, spending 2 nights a month talking to people in their darkest moments, passing on the words that had once saved him and that he'd passed to Sophia. 2 years after their reunion, Callum was invited to speak at the opening of a new teen mental health center. The keynote speaker was Dr. Sophia Lancaster. Now with her master's degree and already making waves in adolescent psychology, after their talks, they found themselves alone in the center's library, and Sophia said quietly, "I need to tell you something." "What's that?" Callum asked. "When I tracked you down 2 years ago, it was just to say thank you. I didn't expect anything beyond that one meeting. But getting to know you, watching you take your own pain and turn it into this foundation, this center, watching you live the lesson you taught me, I've fallen in love with you." Callum felt his heart race. Over the past 2 years, he'd found himself drawn to Sophia in ways he hadn't expected. Her strength, her compassion, her absolute dedication to helping others, she embodied everything he valued. "Sophia, you were 14 when we met. I don't want you to confuse gratitude with, I'm not confused," Sophia interrupted gently. "I'm 24 now, not 14. I've had therapy, relationships, a full life. My gratitude for what you did will never change. But what I feel now is different. I love who you are, not just what you did for me." "I love you too," Callum admitted. "I've been fighting it because I didn't want you to feel obligated. I'm not obligated. I'm choosing. There's a difference." They married a year later in a small ceremony at the mental health center they'd built together. Instead of a registry, they asked guests to donate to crisis prevention programs. And in their vows, both spoke about second chances and the responsibility of survival. To honor the life you've been given by helping others find their own reasons to stay. 10 years after that wedding, Callum and Sophia stood together at another bridge, the one where they'd first met. They were there for a memorial service, unveiling a plaque that read, "You are not alone. Your life has value. Be brave for one more day. Crisis hotline. Call anytime." Their daughter, 8 years old and named Hope, asked why they came to this bridge every year. "Because this is where your daddy taught me to be brave," Sophia explained. "And where I learned that one person caring enough to stop and listen can change everything." "It's where I learned," Callum added, "that the most important thing we can do with our lives is show up for people in their darkest moments and remind them that darkness is temporary. But the choice to survive opens up infinite possibilities." Hope looked at the bridge, then at her parents. "When I grow up, I want to help people be brave too." "You already do," Sophia said, hugging her daughter close. "Every day you're alive, you remind us why survival matters. You're the proof that choosing life, even when it's hard, leads to more love than we can imagine." Because that's what Callum had learned on a rainy night 24 years ago when he stopped his car for a suicidal teen. That we never know the full impact of our choices. That one moment of compassion can echo through decades, creating lives and love and purpose that ripple outward in ways we'll never fully comprehend. Sophia had come to say thank you, but in doing so, she'd reminded Callum that his own survival had been worth it. That his grandfather's words about turning pain into purpose hadn't just saved him, they'd created a legacy of life that would continue long after both of them were gone. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that our darkest moments can lead to our greatest purpose, and that one person caring can save a life, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about mental health. The power of compassion and building legacies that matter. Comment below about a time someone's kindness gave you hope, or about learning that survival is the bravest choice we can make. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out to a crisis helpline. You matter, your life has value, and the world needs you to be brave for one more day.
A young billionaire visits a public school to make a donation and sees a poor girl playing alone with an empty lunchbox. She smiles and says, "I only bring the box so no one thinks I don't have any food." He opens the lunchbox and cannot hold back his tears when he sees what's inside. Jack Turner drove purposefully through the city streets on a sunny Thursday afternoon. The late-day sun streamed through the windows of his imported car, reflecting on the leather dashboard as he searched for the right street. At 32, as the heir to the Turner Markets chain, Jack lived surrounded by luxury and privilege, yet something in his life didn't feel right. Endless meetings, financial reports, cold decisions based solely on numbers, none of it filled the emptiness that not even all his material possessions could erase. "It must be around here," he murmured to himself, slowing down as he approached a familiar corner. A few days ago, on his way back from a shareholders' meeting, Jack had passed by this area and noticed a small public school. It was nothing remarkable, just a simple building with a colorful playground and children playing. But that image stayed with him, a stark contrast to the corporate world he inhabited. Today, after yet another meeting that felt pointless, he decided he needed to do something different, something that mattered. When he finally spotted the school, Jack parked and spent a few minutes observing the building. Kids were running around the yard, their laughter reaching him even inside the car. An involuntary smile appeared on his face as he grabbed an envelope from the passenger seat. Time to do something worthwhile, he thought, stepping out of the vehicle. The warmth of the day hit him immediately. Jack loosened his expensive tie and walked toward the school entrance. His Italian suit stood out completely in that setting, making him feel somewhat out of place, but he didn't mind. He was there for a reason. At the school's entrance, a simple table displayed an almost empty box containing a few children's books. A handmade sign announced, "Book donations help our children dream." A middle-aged woman smiled when she saw him approaching. "May I help you, sir?" "Yes," Jack replied, holding the envelope firmly. "I'd like to make a donation to the school. Where can I speak to someone in charge?" "The office is at the end of this hallway," she indicated, looking at him with curiosity. It wasn't common to see men in suits at that neighborhood school. Jack followed the hallway, noticing the colorful drawings decorating the worn walls. There was a genuineness in those children's sketches that even the expensive art in his apartment couldn't convey. After handing over the check at the office and politely declining the donation certificate they wanted to give him, Jack decided to look around a bit more. The office clerk, still surprised by the donation amount, said he was free to walk around the school as he pleased. "Recess is starting now. Maybe you'd like to see the kids in the cafeteria." "It's that way," she suggested, pointing down another corridor. Jack thanked her and walked in the indicated direction, hearing the growing noise of children's voices. The cafeteria was a large and simple space with long tables where the kids gathered to eat. Some had colorful lunchboxes, others received the school's free meals. That's when he saw her. At a table in the far corner, sitting all by herself, a small, dark-haired girl with her hair in a braid was playing with a faded blue lunchbox. Unlike the other children, she wasn't eating. Instead, she pretended to serve food on imaginary plates, talking to herself as if she were in a restaurant. "Here's your special sandwich, Mum," the girl said to the empty air in front of her. "And for you, sir, I brought strawberry juice. It's the best in town." Jack felt something strange in his chest, a mix of fascination and sadness. While the other kids were eating and chatting in noisy groups, that girl was creating an entire world out of nothing. Her expression was so serious and focused that it felt like she truly believed in the plates she was serving. Without thinking too much about what he was doing, Jack walked over to her. "This restaurant looks amazing," he said with a gentle smile. "Is there a table available?" The girl looked up, surprised. Her big eyes grew even larger upon seeing an unfamiliar adult talking to her, but the surprise soon gave way to a radiant smile. "Yes, sir. Welcome to Emily's restaurant." Emily, so that was her name. Jack sat on the small bench across from her, feeling strangely at ease despite his legs barely fitting under the low table. "What do you recommend today?" he asked, joining in the game. Emily struck a serious, professional pose, placing her tiny hands on her hips. "Our special is an everything sandwich, with melted cheese and magic fries. And there's a surprise dessert. Sounds delicious, I'll have exactly that." With careful movements, Emily opened her lunchbox in front of him. Jack discreetly watched and saw that it was completely empty, except for a small note written in an adult's handwriting. He managed to read the words, "I'm sorry. I promise I'll send something tomorrow." Emily quickly closed the lunchbox, as if she didn't want him to see what was inside. Then she continued her game, pretending to gather invisible ingredients, preparing the imaginary sandwich with the concentration of a professional chef. "Here you go, careful, it's hot." Jack pretended to pick up the sandwich and took a big bite. The best I've ever tasted. How do you make it so delicious?" Emily smiled, a smile that lit up her entire face. Jack felt something shift inside him, as if a door that had been locked for years was finally opening. "It's the chef's secret," she replied, placing a finger to her lips. "Do you work here every day?" Jack asked, as he continued to pretend to chew. "Yes, except when it rains a lot. Then the restaurant closes because the roof leaks," she said matter-of-factly. "But tomorrow it'll be open. Will you come back?" The question, asked with such hopeful innocence, caught Jack off guard. He noticed that some kids at nearby tables were looking at them curiously. Some whispered, others giggled quietly. But Emily didn't seem to care. Her little imaginary world was more real and important than any outside judgment. "Of course I'll come back," Jack replied, feeling for the first time in a long while that he was making a promise he truly wanted to keep. The image of the empty lunchbox with that simple note wouldn't leave Jack's mind. A message from a mother to her child. "I'm sorry. I promise I'll send something tomorrow." Those words hit him like a punch to the gut, a promise of a better tomorrow, an apology. He imagined Emily's mother writing those words, trying to soften the reality for her daughter, promising something she might not be able to fulfill. While Emily kept serving imaginary food, telling stories about her regular customers and special dishes she invented, Jack watched her with growing admiration. How could such a small child create so much joy out of such a difficult situation? How could she maintain that dignity, that creativity, when the reality around her was so harsh? The bell rang, announcing the end of recess. Emily carefully closed the lunchbox. "The restaurant is closing now, sir. Come back tomorrow, okay?" "I will, I promise," Jack answered, with a sincerity that surprised even him. As the children headed back to their classrooms, Jack remained seated, staring at the faded blue lunchbox Emily carried so proudly. On his way back to the car, he couldn't shake the image of Emily serving imaginary food, preserving her dignity through creativity. The note, "I'm sorry. I promise I'll send something tomorrow," echoed in his thoughts. Back in his world of luxury and comfort, Jack spent the rest of the day distracted. During the following meetings, he saw Emily's face. In the financial reports, he thought of the empty lunchbox. At dinner in his spacious apartment, he looked at his own meal and, for the first time in years, felt deep shame. That night, lying in his expensive bed overlooking the illuminated city, Jack made a decision. Tomorrow, that note in Emily's lunchbox would become real. For her, there would be a different tomorrow. And for Jack too. Jack woke up earlier than usual the next morning. For the first time in a long while, he didn't need an alarm to get out of bed. The memory of Emily's empty lunchbox followed him throughout the night, and he already had a clear plan in mind. After a quick shower, Jack dressed in more casual clothes, jeans and a simple shirt, swapping his usual suit for something less intimidating. On his way to the school, he stopped at a department store as soon as it opened and chose a new, colorful lunchbox with stars and planets. Perfect, he thought, imagining Emily's smile. The next stop was a delicatessen. Jack wasn't quite sure what a small child like Emily would enjoy eating, so he asked the attendant for help. "It's for a little girl," he explained, feeling strangely embarrassed. "Something simple but good." The attendant smiled and prepared a turkey and cheese sandwich, some fresh-cut fruit, a natural juice, and a small chocolate brownie. While paying, Jack realized he was more nervous than at his most important business meetings. When he arrived at the school, the start-of-day rush was already over. Jack entered the office, carefully carrying the new lunchbox. "Good morning. I'd like to leave this for a student named Emily," he told the secretary. The woman looked at him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Are you a relative?" "No, I'm a family friend," Jack improvised. "I came by yesterday to make a donation and met Emily. She told me sometimes she doesn't bring lunch, so I thought I'd help." The secretary hesitated, examining Jack and then the lunchbox. "I could call her teacher if you prefer," he offered, sensing he needed to clarify his intentions. At that moment, the office door opened and a young teacher walked in carrying some papers. "Mrs. Miller, can you help me with—" She paused upon seeing Jack. "Oh, sorry. I didn't realize someone was here." The secretary seized the opportunity. "This gentleman came to bring a lunch for Emily. You're her teacher, right?" The young teacher nodded, looking at Jack with interest. "Yes, Emily's in my class. Are you related to her?" "Actually, no," Jack explained again. "I met Emily yesterday and wanted to do something nice for her. I brought this lunchbox and some food." The teacher smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face. "That's very kind of you. Emily is a wonderful child. If you'd like, you can give it to her in person during recess. It'll mean a lot more to her." Jack accepted the offer, feeling immediate relief. Seeing Emily's reaction was exactly what he wanted. For the next 2 hours, Jack waited in a nearby cafe, answering emails on his phone without really focusing. When he finally returned to the school in time for recess, his heart was pounding like a teenager's. Emily's teacher awaited him at the entrance to the cafeteria. "She's inside, at the same table as yesterday," she said with a knowing smile. Jack walked in, immediately spotting Emily alone at her corner table, once again playing with her old, empty lunchbox. He approached slowly, hiding the new, starry lunchbox behind his back. "Is the restaurant open today?" he asked with a smile. Emily looked up, and her face lit up as she recognized him. "You really came back." "I promised, didn't I? And I brought something for you." Jack placed the new starry lunchbox on the table. Emily stared at it, then at Jack, her eyes wide with surprise. Is it for me?" "All yours. And look, there's something inside." Gently, as if handling a precious treasure, Emily opened the new lunchbox. Her eyes sparkled at the sight of real food inside. A real sandwich and juice. And a brownie. She looked at Jack, her expression shifting between joy and confusion. "But why?" Jack sat down beside her, feeling a lump in his throat. "Because I loved your restaurant, and every good chef deserves to taste real food sometimes, don't you think?" Emily nodded seriously. Then, with a gesture that took Jack completely by surprise, she leaned forward and gave him a quick hug. "Thank you, mister." "My name is Jack," he said, feeling unexpectedly moved. "Thank you, Jack," she repeated, before turning her attention to the sandwich. She took a bite and smiled with her mouth full. "It's really good." Jack watched Emily eat with appetite. After a few bites, she stopped and looked around as if searching for someone. "Do you want to share with me? There's plenty," she offered. The spontaneous generosity of the girl, even after going hungry, touched Jack deeply. "No, that's all yours." "I already ate, thanks." Emily continued eating, but now she spoke between bites, as if the real food had opened the door to a real conversation, too. "My mom's going to be happy. She gets sad when there's no food to pack for me and my little sister." "You have a sister?" Jack asked, genuinely interested. "Yeah, Lily. She's still little, only 3. She goes to daycare. The teacher there gives her food." Emily paused to take a sip of juice. "My mom works a lot, you know. She cleans houses now." "Cleans houses?" Emily nodded, her face showing an adult-like seriousness. "She lost her job at the supermarket. Now she cleans houses and sometimes sews. She does whatever she can." The girl smiled, a smile full of pride. "She's the best mom in the world." Jack felt a pang in his chest. The supermarket. Could it be that Emily's mother had worked at one of the Turner Market stores? "She must be a very special person," he commented, trying to keep his voice steady. "She is. She taught me how to play restaurant." Emily finished her sandwich and picked up the small container of fruit. "When we don't have real food, we pretend. Then my stomach doesn't hurt as much, you know?" Jack swallowed hard. No, he didn't know. He had never truly been hungry in his privileged life. "Is that why you have such a cool restaurant?" he asked, trying to keep the tone light. Emily beamed with pride. "Yes, one day I'll have a real restaurant, and no one will go hungry. Everyone will get to eat, even if they don't have money." The simple, generous dream of that little girl made Jack feel ashamed for all the times he had complained about his life. They chatted a bit longer, Emily telling him about her classes, about how she helped her mom care for her younger sister, about the different places they had lived. The bell rang, signaling the end of recess. Emily carefully saved the brownie she hadn't yet eaten. "I'm going to take half for Lily," she explained, breaking the treat into 2 uneven pieces, one larger piece for her sister. Jack felt something shift inside him, like a missing puzzle piece finally clicking into place. This child, who had so little, was teaching him about generosity and love in a way none of his business mentors ever had. "Can I come back tomorrow?" Jack asked, feeling as vulnerable as a child. Emily's face lit up again. "Yes. Emily's restaurant is always open for you." She grabbed both lunchboxes, the old one and the new one, and ran off to join the line of children heading back to class. Halfway there, she turned and waved to Jack. He waved back, with a smile that rose from the depths of his soul. Jack knew something had changed inside him, something that had no return. And for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of it. On the contrary, he felt truly alive. The Turner Market's corporate office occupied the top 3 floors of a downtown skyscraper. From his office on the top floor, Jack could see the entire metropolis stretching out to the horizon. Normally, that view made him feel powerful, on top of the world. Today, however, he could only think of how small Emily seemed at her corner table in the school cafeteria. 3 days had passed since he'd brought the lunchbox to Emily. 3 days in which he kept his promise to come back, always bringing a different lunch. 3 days in which he learned a bit more about her through simple conversations during school recess. But today, Jack was back in his own world. Sitting in his leather chair, he looked at his computer screen without really seeing the numbers on the spreadsheet. All he could see was Emily's smile when she received the new lunchbox. "Jack, are you listening?" His assistant's voice brought him back to reality. Martin was standing in front of him, holding a folder of documents, looking concerned. "Sorry, Martin. What were you saying?" "The board meeting. It starts in 5 minutes." Jack nodded, running a hand over his face. "Right. I'm on my way." Throughout the meeting, as they discussed closing 3 more stores to optimize operations and maximize profit per square foot, Jack remained restless. Each time he heard terms like necessary staff reduction and structural adjustments, he thought of Emily talking about her mom losing her job. How many single mothers were hidden in those charts? How many other children like Emily were bringing empty lunchboxes to school? When the meeting finally ended, Jack felt a weight he'd never noticed before. Instead of returning to his office, he decided to leave early. He needed to clarify his thoughts, to better understand what he was feeling. The next day, Jack cancelled his appointments and drove to Emily's school. He was determined to find out more, to gain a deeper understanding of the situation. The principal welcomed him into her small office, looking genuinely pleased to see him again. "Mr. Turner, Emily won't stop talking about you and the lunchboxes. It's a beautiful thing you've been doing." Jack smiled, feeling uncomfortable with the praise. "It's the least I can do. Actually, I'd like to know more about her situation, so I can help in a more effective way." The principal sighed, her expression growing more serious. "Emily is one of our brightest students. Did you know that? She has an incredible imagination and an adaptability most adults lack." "I've noticed," Jack agreed. "She told me about her mom who lost her job and now works cleaning houses." "Yes, Rachel Miller, a remarkable woman." The principal flipped through a folder on her desk. "She's always present at school meetings, even with 2 jobs. She never complains, but I can see how hard it's been since she lost her stable job." Jack felt a growing curiosity. "Do you happen to know Emily's mother's full name, and maybe where they live?" The principal studied him for a moment, as if gauging his intentions. "Mr. Turner, may I ask what your real interest is in this family?" Jack wasn't prepared for such a direct question. He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Meeting Emily made me want to help more directly. Maybe I can do something that truly makes a difference for them." The principal seemed to evaluate his words, looking for signs of dishonesty or hidden motives. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because her expression softened. "The mother's name is Rachel Miller." She picked up a paper and jotted something down. "And here's their address." Jack held the paper carefully. "Thank you. I'm trusting you, Mr. Turner. the principal added seriously. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of that trust. He returned to his car and looked at the address in his hands. It was a modest neighborhood far from the city center where he lived. Checking his watch, he realized it was time to meet Rachel Miller. The neighborhood where Rachel and Emily lived was on the outskirts of the city. Jack drove slowly, noticing the simple, well-kept houses, some with small front gardens and others with bicycles resting against low walls. Children played on sidewalks, enjoying the late afternoon sunshine. As he followed the GPS, the landscape changed subtly. The houses became smaller, more crowded together. Some small apartment buildings appeared among them. Jack reduced his speed even more, checking the house numbers. He finally found the address. It was a small two-story building with a worn but clean facade. Potted plants decorated the entrance, and an external staircase led to the second floor. Jack parked across the street and stayed there for a few minutes, just observing. What was he doing? What right did he have to barge into this family's life? What would he say when the door opened? He was about to give up when he saw Emily coming down the external stairs, holding the hand of a young woman who was carrying a smaller child in her arms. Emily wore the same school uniform, but somehow looked different, lighter, more childlike, away from her chef role at school. The woman with her, Rachel, he assumed, was simply beautiful in a natural way. Dark hair like Emily's, in a hastily pinned bun, a tired but kind face and wearing simple, mile-worn clothes. The younger girl, presumably Lily, was practically a tiny version of Emily. Jack got out of the car, feeling his heart race. Emily spotted him immediately. "Look, Mom, it's Jack," she exclaimed, letting go of her mother's hand and running toward him. Rachel stopped, suddenly alert, pulling the younger daughter closer while Emily hugged Jack's legs with the easy familiarity children show when they trust someone. "Hi, Emily." Jack smiled at the girl, then looked at Rachel, who observed him with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Hello, I'm Jack Turner. Sorry for showing up unannounced." Rachel walked over slowly, still holding Lily. "Emily talks a lot about you," she said in a soft yet firm voice. "You're the lunchbox man." Jack felt his face grow warm. "The principal gave me your address. I hope you don't mind." A brief silence fell between them, broken by Emily tugging at Jack's hand. "Want to see our place?" "It's small, but it's nice. I help clean up every day," Rachel intervened. "Emily, I'm sure Mr. Turner is busy. He probably just came to say hello." "Actually," Jack hurried to say, "if it's not a bother, I'd love to see it." Rachel examined him for a moment, as though trying to determine if he posed any danger. Finally, she nodded slightly. "We don't have much to offer, but you're welcome to a cup of coffee." Their apartment was on the second floor. It was small, with only 2 rooms besides the bathroom, but impeccably clean and organized. The living room doubled as a kitchen and dining area, with a small table against the wall. A well-kept but worn sofa took up the opposite wall. A few toys were neatly stored in a colorful box in the corner. "Please, have a seat," Rachel indicated the sofa, placing Lily on the floor, who ran to the box of toys. "I'll make some coffee." "No need to trouble yourself," said Jack, awkwardly sitting on the small sofa. "It's no trouble," Rachel replied with a faint smile. "It's the least I can offer someone who's been so kind to my daughter." While Rachel prepared the coffee, Emily sat next to Jack, excited to show him her little nook in the living room, a small shelf with library books and drawings taped to the wall. "That's you," she said, pointing to a colorful drawing where a tall man in a suit held what appeared to be a lunchbox. "And that's me, with the new lunchbox you gave me." Jack felt a lump in his throat. "It's beautiful, Emily." "Here's Mom." Emily pointed to another figure in the drawing. "And here's Lily. We're a family." Jack noticed he was also in Emily's family drawing, and it moved him deeply. Rachel returned with 2 cups of coffee, placing them on the small table. "Emily, please take your sister to the bedroom for a bit. I want to talk to Mr. Turner." "He's just Jack, Mom," Emily corrected with a child's simplicity. "Come on, Lily, let's play restaurant." When the girls left, Rachel sat at the other end of the sofa, holding her cup in both hands as if seeking warmth. "Thank you," she said simply, "for what you've been doing for Emily." "It's nothing," Jack responded, feeling oddly embarrassed. Emily is an amazing kid. Yes, she is, Rachel smiled, a proud maternal smile. But it's not common for a stranger to care like this, especially someone like you. Someone like me, Rachel gestured vaguely. Your car, your clothes, it's obvious you come from a different world than ours. Jack couldn't argue. She was right, of course. Emily told me about her restaurant, he said, trying to fill the silence. Rachel lowered her eyes, and Jack realized he'd touched on a sensitive point. That was my idea, she admitted, her voice softer. When we had no real food to pack in her lunchbox, I told her to pretend it was a restaurant. She paused, taking a sip of coffee. I never imagined she'd take it so seriously. It's an incredible idea, Jack said sincerely. Turning something sad into a game. Rachel met his gaze for the first time since they sat down. You do whatever you have to for your kids, Mr. Turner, to protect them so they don't feel the weight of it all. Something in the way she spoke, in the quiet dignity of her words, made Jack want to know more. Emily mentioned you lost your job, he ventured cautiously. Rachel nodded, placing her cup on the table. I used to work as a cashier at Turner Markets. I was there for almost 10 years. One day they announced that store was closing. They let me go by email, no explanation, no plan. Since then, I clean houses, sew, whatever comes my way, all to keep food on the table, sometimes not even that. Jack felt as though someone had punched him in the stomach. Turner Markets, his family's company, the company he helped run. Rachel paused and smiled, looking toward the bedroom, where the girls' laughter could be heard. But my daughter, she never complained. She'd take her empty lunchbox and still smile. She said it was only temporary, and she'd write notes to herself when I couldn't. Jack listened in silence, his throat tight. Something inside him was beginning to change definitively. This was no longer just a sad story about a stranger's family. It was a direct consequence of the decisions his family, and he himself, made every day without considering the people behind the numbers. That must have been hard, he managed to say finally. Rachel shrugged, a gesture that carried both resignation and strength. That's life for people like us. Doors close, and you have to find windows. What matters is that my girls are healthy and together. We have a roof, and most days, food. That's more than many have. Jack glanced around the small, clean apartment, listened to the girls laughing in the next room. He thought of his own penthouse, huge and empty. How many meetings had he attended where they talked about staff optimization and downsizing unprofitable units? How many Rachel Millers had been affected by his decisions? I didn't know, he said, more to himself than to her. How could you? Rachel answered, without bitterness in her voice. The people making those decisions never see who's on the other side. To them, we're just numbers on a spreadsheet. A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the girls' laughter in the other room. I want to help, Jack said finally, looking directly at Rachel. Really? Rachel studied him for a moment, as if trying to read his true intentions. Why? Why do you care what happens to us? It was a fair question, and Jack had to be honest. Because Emily showed me something I'd never seen before. Her courage, her imagination, her generosity even when she had nothing to give. He paused, choosing his words. I want to do something that truly matters, for the first time in my life. Rachel didn't respond immediately. From the bedroom, they heard Emily explaining to Lily how to serve customers in her imaginary restaurant. You seem like a good man, Jack, Rachel said at last, but we don't need charity. We need dignity, honest work, knowing tomorrow won't be worse than today. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of those simple, truthful words. He didn't have an immediate answer, but he knew he couldn't just go back to his normal life after today, after seeing the home behind that lunchbox. Emily ran back into the room, holding a drawing. I made this for you, Jack, she announced, handing him the colorful paper. It was a new drawing of Emily's restaurant, but this time with customers at the tables, including Jack, Rachel, and Lily. It's the best restaurant in the world, Jack said, his voice choked with emotion. He looked at Rachel and saw something in her eyes, a mix of motherly protectiveness, pride, and perhaps just maybe a faint glimmer of hope. Jack walked down the stairs of the small building with heavy steps. The sky was already darkening, painting the city in deep shades of blue. Rachel's words still echoed in his mind. Turner Markets, his company, his family, his responsibility. Sitting in his car, he didn't start the engine right away. He needed a moment to process everything he'd discovered. Sometimes life's coincidences were cruel. Of all the children with empty lunchboxes, he'd found Emily, the daughter of a former employee of his family's company. The image of Rachel describing how she was fired by email after 10 years of loyal service wouldn't leave his mind. No explanation, no plan. Those words would haunt him for a long time. He finally started the car and drove back toward downtown. The lights of shops and restaurants seemed offensively bright now, the faces of people on the sidewalks blissfully unaware of the Rachels and Emilys of the world. The concierge at his luxury building greeted him with the usual deference. "Good evening, Mr. Turner," Jack replied automatically, taking the elevator up to his penthouse. Never before had the contrast between his life and that of people like Rachel been so glaring. His apartment, spacious and elegantly decorated, suddenly felt too large, too cold. Jack tossed his keys on the table and headed to his home office. He needed to confirm a suspicion that was now eating him up inside. He turned on his computer and logged into the company network. He had access to practically all corporate documents, a privilege of his last name. He started searching for records of store closures over the past few years. Unit 237, East Side Neighborhood, closure approved on 01/17. The file appeared on the screen, and Jack opened it with a racing heart. The report was cold and technical, like all corporate documents: profitability analyses, cost projections, recommendations for reallocating assets. In the Human Resources Impact section, an attachment listed the employees who would be laid off. Jack ran his finger over the screen, looking for a specific name, and then there it was: Miller, Rachel A., senior cashier, 9 years and 8 months of service, dismissal with no recommended relocation. A chill ran down his spine. Jack faintly remembered that meeting. It was at the start of the year, one among dozens of similar meetings. He had signed off on the approval without asking many questions, trusting the finance and operations department's analyses. Continuing his search, he found the template email that had been sent to employees. Impersonal, direct, almost mechanical. Dear employee, we regret to inform you that, due to the company's strategic reorganization, the unit where you work will be discontinued within 30 days. We are sorry to say that your position will be eliminated, with no possibility of relocation at this time. Jack closed the email, feeling nauseous. That was what Rachel had received after almost a decade of service. A standard form, probably without even her name spelled correctly in some cases. In the corner of the screen, he noticed the list of document approvers. His name was there, along with his digital signature. He had agreed to all of it, without ever thinking about the real people behind the numbers. Jack stood up and walked to the window. The city glowed below, thousands of lights representing thousands of lives. How many of those lights belonged to people who had been affected by his decisions? How many children like Emily, at that very moment, were playing with empty lunchboxes because he had signed a document without considering the consequences? The weight of responsibility fell on his shoulders like never before. It wasn't just sadness he felt, it was deep remorse, a guilt he couldn't ignore. Jack returned to the computer and opened more reports, more emails, more documents. The story repeated itself in each file: cold decisions, lives irreparably changed. And his name, his signature, his silent participation in all of it. Hours passed as he dug deeper into the truth he had never wanted to see. By the time he pulled away from his desk, it was already past midnight. His body was exhausted, but his mind still raced. Jack poured himself a drink and sat on the dark sofa. The image of Emily offering imaginary food at her restaurant now carried a completely new meaning. It wasn't just a child's game, it was a survival strategy, a brave attempt to keep dignity, to transform hunger into something less painful. And that note in the lunchbox: "I'm sorry. I promise I'll send something tomorrow." How many times had Rachel written those words, promising what she didn't know if she could deliver? How many nights had she lain awake, worrying about what her daughters would eat the next day, all because of decisions like the ones he signed off on nearly every day. Jack set the glass on the table and walked to his bedroom. He lay on the king-size bed staring at the ceiling. The silence of the apartment was deafening. Somewhere in the city, Emily and Lily were probably sleeping together in a small bed, while Rachel might still be awake, worried about bills, about the future. Sleep didn't come. Jack tossed and turned, tormented by thoughts and images. Emily drawing her restaurant, Rachel holding her coffee cup in both hands as if seeking warmth, Lily running to play with her older sister, oblivious to the hardships around them. Around 3 in the morning, Jack got up. He knew he wouldn't sleep. He returned to the living room and sat down again, this time without a drink. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time in his life, he felt he had to do something truly brave. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be comfortable. It wouldn't just be a matter of signing a generous check or making an anonymous donation. It had to be real, something that would truly make a difference. Not to ease his guilt, although the guilt was real and deserved, but to honor something he'd seen in that empty lunchbox, in that small and tidy apartment, in that family that refused to be defeated. He had seen hope, a stubborn, resilient hope that refused to give in, even in the toughest circumstances. A hope that deserved to be rewarded with actions, not just words or empty promises. When the sun began to rise, painting the sky pink and gold, Jack already had a plan. It wouldn't be simple. He would likely face resistance, maybe even ridicule. But for the first time in a long while, he felt he was about to do something that truly mattered. Something that might, just might, begin to correct a wrong that should never have happened. The Turner Market's headquarters occupied an imposing building in the city's financial district. The glass facade reflected the clear morning sky as employees hurried inside for another workday. Jack walked through the main lobby with determined steps, ignoring the respectful greetings he would normally return. His mind was focused on one thing, the conversation he would have with his father. Thomas Turner, founder and president of the supermarket chain, had just turned 65, but still had the vigor and resolve that had turned him from the owner of a small grocery store into one of the most successful businessmen in the region. He was a practical, direct man and, in many people's view, ruthless when it came to business. Jack had scheduled the meeting for early morning, knowing his father always arrived before everyone else. He needed this private moment, without other executives or the secretary who filtered information going to the president. "Good morning, son," Thomas's deep voice sounded as Jack entered the large presidential office. The older man was standing by the window, observing the slowly awakening city. "It's rare to see you here so early. Did something happen?" Jack took a deep breath before answering. "We need to talk about something important, Dad." Thomas turned around, studying his son with that penetrating gaze that intimidated far more experienced executives than Jack. "It looks serious. Have a seat." "I'd rather stand," Jack replied, sensing an uncommon firmness in his own voice. Thomas raised an eyebrow but didn't insist. He walked over to his desk and leaned against its edge, folding his arms. "I'm listening." Jack hadn't rehearsed what he would say. He just knew he had to be honest and direct. "I recently met a family. A single mother, 2 young daughters. The mother worked at one of our stores for almost 10 years. She was let go when we closed the East Side store." Thomas remained impassive. "We've closed many stores in recent years, Jack. It's part of the business. The unprofitable ones make way for us to invest in more promising locations." "I know. I signed off on almost all those approvals." Jack paused. "But I'd never seen the other side of the equation. The real people affected by our decisions." "Business is business," Thomas replied with a sigh. "We can't save everyone." "I'm not talking about saving everyone. I'm talking about this specific family." Jack stepped closer, maintaining eye contact. "Her name is Rachel Miller. She was fired by email with no adequate notice, no transition plan. Now she cleans houses to support her daughters. The older one, Emily, brings an empty lunchbox to school and pretends she's serving food." Thomas frowned. "How did you meet this family?" "It's a long story. The important thing is that I saw firsthand the impact of our decisions I helped make." A heavy silence filled the office. Thomas studied his son with a complex expression, a mix of surprise, respect, and perhaps a trace of concern. "So, what do you intend to do about it?" he asked at last. Jack had been expecting this question. "I want to rehire her. Give her a new position in the company with stability and respect, something that makes use of her skills and experience, but also offers a better future for her and her daughters." Thomas uncrossed his arms and walked slowly to the coffee machine in the corner of the room. He poured himself a cup before replying, "You know we can't make exceptions like this. We have protocols, hiring policies. If we do this for one former employee, we'll have to do it for all." "I'm not asking us to change the company's entire policy," Jack countered, standing his ground. "I'm saying that, in this specific case, we made a mistake, and I want to fix it." Thomas took a sip of his coffee, watching his son over the rim of the cup. Something in Jack's gaze seemed different, a determination Thomas wasn't used to seeing. "Why is this so important to you, Jack?" "It's just one among hundreds of layoffs we approve every year." Jack thought for a moment. It was a fair question. "Because I saw the face behind the numbers, Dad. I saw a dignified woman struggling to keep hope alive for her daughters. I saw a little girl turning hunger into a game, so her mother wouldn't feel guilty." He paused to choose his words. "And because I know we can do better, that I can do better." Thomas set his cup on the desk and studied his son in silence. Behind his serious expression, something like pride began to form. "Are you willing to take personal responsibility for this?" he finally asked. "Find a suitable position for her, train her if necessary, ensure it works for the company and for her." "I am," Jack answered without hesitation. "That's exactly what I want to do." Thomas walked until he stood face to face with his son. "It won't be easy. The board will question it. Other executives will talk. Some will say you're acting out of sentimentality rather than business logic. Let them talk." Jack kept his gaze steady. "I'm not trying to revolutionize the company. I just want to correct something we did wrong. And maybe in the process, remind everyone that there are real people behind every decision we make." A flicker of a smile crossed Thomas's usually serious face. "You know, your grandfather used to say that a good business benefits all parties involved. Maybe we've lost sight of that a bit in recent years." He paused. "All right, Jack. You have my approval to rehire her. But it's your responsibility entirely." Jack nodded, accepting the challenge. "Thank you, Dad." "Don't thank me yet," Thomas replied, returning to his desk. "The hardest part is yet to come. You'll have to tell this woman the truth, who you are, and what role you played in her dismissal. Then you'll have to convince her to come back to the same company that discarded her." Jack had already thought of that. The idea of revealing his identity to Rachel scared him, but he knew it was necessary. "I know, and that's what I plan to do. I don't want to hide anything. I want to fix this mistake in the most honest way possible." Thomas sat down in his chair, regarding his son with a new expression, as if truly seeing him for the first time. "You've changed, Jack. What happened?" Jack thought of Emily and her imaginary restaurant, of Rachel and her quiet dignity, of Lily and her uncertain future. "Let's just say I finally understand the real meaning of what we do here," he replied simply. When he left his father's office, Jack felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The easiest part was done. Now he had to face Rachel, tell her the truth, and hope she'd accept his proposal. It wouldn't be an easy conversation. But nothing that truly matters ever is, a lesson he was only beginning to learn. Jack drove slowly through the streets of the neighborhood, each block bringing him closer to a conversation that could change everything or end before it began. The small building where Rachel and the girls lived looked more intimidating today. It was late Saturday afternoon, a time Jack had confirmed with the school principal as the best chance to find Rachel at home. He parked his car and stayed there for a few minutes, mentally rehearsing what he would say, how to explain who he really was, how to talk about his part in the decision that changed her life. There was no easy way, only the honest way. With that thought, Jack got out of the car and headed to the building. He climbed the external stairs with heavy steps, feeling each one as part of a redemption path that had just begun. When he knocked on the door, he heard children's laughter on the other side. That sound calmed him a bit. He remembered why he was here. It wasn't about him or his guilt. It was about doing the right thing. Rachel opened the door, wearing simple home clothes with her hair pulled into a casual ponytail. Her face registered surprise, followed by a timid smile. "Jack, we weren't expecting you today." Before he could answer, Emily came running up behind her mom, Lily trailing just a few steps behind. "Jack, did you come to play restaurant with us?" He smiled at the girl, feeling the weight of what he was about to reveal. "Hi, Emily. Actually, I came to talk to your mom about something important." Rachel noticed the seriousness in his voice and nodded. "Emily, take Lily to the bedroom and show her that new game you got from school, okay?" Emily looked ready to protest, but something in her mother's expression made her agree. "Okay, but then can Jack play with us?" "We'll see," Rachel answered, running a hand through her daughter's hair. "Go on now." Once the girls were gone, Rachel invited Jack inside, indicating the couch. "Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you," he replied, remaining on his feet. He felt too restless to sit. "Rachel, I need to tell you something. Something I should have said from the start." She crossed her arms, a posture that instinctively showed defense. "What is it?" Jack took a deep breath. "Now or never. My full name is Jack Turner. My family owns Turner Markets." The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel stared at him, frozen, as if processing each word slowly. Her eyes widened, and the color drained from her face. "Turner Markets." Her voice was almost a whisper. "Yes," Jack confirmed, keeping his gaze steady, despite the urge to look away. "The company you worked at for almost 10 years. Rachel stepped back, as if she needed physical distance to process the information. Her eyes, once warm, now scrutinized him with confusion and distrust. "Why didn't you tell me before? Why—" She stopped, realization dawning on her face. "Is that why you got close to Emily? Because of my dismissal?" "No," Jack said quickly. "When I met Emily, I had no idea who she was. It was a coincidence, I swear. I only found out the connection after I first visited you, when you mentioned working at Turner Markets." Rachel backed away further, sitting down on one of the chairs by the small dining table. Her eyes remained locked on Jack's, searching for any hint of falsehood. "Why are you telling me this now?" Jack approached slowly, keeping a respectful distance. "Because you deserve to know the whole truth." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Rachel, I'm not just the son of the owner, I'm one of the executives who approved the closure of the store where you worked." The impact of that revelation hit Rachel like a wave. Her shoulders sagged, and she raised a hand to her lips to stifle her reaction. "You—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Jack felt his throat tighten. It was even worse than he'd imagined. Seeing Rachel's face, the real pain in her eyes, was far different from thinking abstractly about affected employees. "When I found out, I went digging into the records. I saw your name on the layoff list. I saw the impersonal email we sent. I saw there was no attempt to find another position for you, despite your great track record." Rachel stayed silent, just watching him, as if each word were another blow. "What I'm trying to say, Rachel, is that I'm so sorry. Deeply." Jack took another step forward, almost pleading with his eyes. "I never thought of the real people behind those decisions, the real impacts, the families, the empty lunchboxes." At the mention of the lunchboxes, Rachel's expression shifted. A flicker of vulnerability crossed her face, soon replaced by a closed expression. "Why are you telling me all this now? What do you want from me?" "Forgiveness." Her voice trembled slightly, but there was a firmness to it as well. "Dignity." Jack shook his head. "I didn't come expecting forgiveness. I came because you deserve to know the truth, and also—" He hesitated, aware of how his next words might sound. "I came to offer something concrete. Not as charity, but as a way to correct a wrong." Rachel waited, still wary but clearly intrigued. "We're opening a new store in the mid-city area, bigger, with specialized sections. We need a manager for the customer service department." Jack paused. "I want to offer you that position." The shock was evident on Rachel's face. Of all the things she might have expected, that proposal probably wasn't one of them. Manager, I was a cashier. A cashier with nearly 10 years' experience, with excellent performance reviews, with deep knowledge of our processes and values. Jack gave a small smile. Also, anyone who manages to raise 2 daughters alone under these conditions has more management skills than most of our executives. Rachel didn't smile back. She was still trying to process it all, grasping the implications. Why would you do that? Is it remorse? Guilt? Jack considered the question. It would be easy to deny, to say it was purely based on her merits, but he had promised himself to be honest. Initially, yes. When I discovered the connection, I felt guilty. But now it's about doing the right thing. He took a chance and sat on the sofa, reducing the physical distance without invading her space. Rachel, you deserve this job. You have the qualifications, and the company would be better with people like you in leadership positions. In the other room, they could hear Emily serving food in her imaginary restaurant, telling Lily stories about their regular customers. The sound seemed to soften something in Rachel, who glanced briefly toward the bedroom before focusing on Jack again. What if I say no? Then I'll respect your decision. I'll keep visiting Emily if you allow me to, and I'll try to find other ways to help, without invading your privacy or hurting your pride. Rachel stayed silent for several minutes. Jack waited, giving her the time she needed. What would the salary be? She finally asked, her tone pragmatic. Jack named a figure more than twice what she had earned as a cashier. Rachel's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. And benefits? Healthcare? Comprehensive, for you and the girls. Stability? A 2-year contract with protective clauses. Renewable based on performance, but with guarantees. Rachel slowly nodded, studying him as if trying to read his soul through his eyes. Why should I trust you now, Jack Turner? The question took him by surprise, not because of the question itself, but because of the raw honesty behind it. Because now I know who you are, Rachel Miller. Not a name on a spreadsheet, not a number in a statistic. A real person with real daughters, with real dreams and fears. He gave a gentle smile. And because I made a promise to your daughter about restaurants and lunches, and I intend to keep it. A flicker of a smile crossed Rachel's face. She really does adore you, you know. Ever since the first day, she hasn't stopped talking about my friend Jack. Jack felt his heart clench. She's an incredible child. Yes, she is. Rachel looked down at her hands, then back at Jack. I'll think about your offer. I can't decide right now. Of course, I completely understand. Completely. Take the time you need. At that moment, Emily rushed back into the living room, Lily close behind. Mom, can we show Jack our drawings? Rachel and Jack exchanged a look, and she nodded, a silent agreement that the serious conversation was done for now. Sure, sweetheart. In no time, Jack was surrounded by colorful drawings, with Emily animatedly explaining every detail. The easy interaction and simple joy of the children contrasted sharply with the tension of the talk they'd just had. By the time he said goodbye, night had fallen. He thanked Rachel for the honest conversation and promised Emily he'd come back soon. I'll think about everything you said, Rachel whispered at the door so the girls wouldn't hear. And thank you for being honest, at least, Jack nodded. It's the least you deserve. 3 days later, Jack received a call at the office. It was Rachel. I accept the job, she said without preamble, but on one condition. What condition? I want to be evaluated by the same standards as any other employee. No special treatment. If I'm not good enough, you'll have to tell me. Jack smiled, admiring that woman's dignity. Deal. The new Turner Market store in the mid-city area was truly impressive. With 2 floors, gourmet and organic sections, plus a full bakery, it represented the new direction the chain wanted to take. Rachel started working there 2 weeks after that decisive phone call. The first days were tough. Although she knew the company's processes well, the manager position was new to her. There was a learning curve, and some suspicious glances from other managers who wondered how a former cashier had gotten such a promotion. But Rachel surprised everyone with her dedication and practical knowledge of daily store operations. She knew exactly what customers were looking for, understood the frustrations of frontline employees, and had practical ideas to improve everyone's experience. Jack visited her regularly at the store, keeping things professional in the workplace, but he soon began frequenting their home on weekends, bringing books for Emily and educational toys for Lily. A month later, Rachel received her first paycheck. The next day, Jack noticed something different about her: freshly cut hair, new clothes, and a sparkle in her eyes he'd never seen before. "The girls already have new lunchboxes," she commented with a smile during a coffee break. "And we're looking for a bigger apartment, closer to school." Jack felt a sense of satisfaction no corporate profit had ever given him. "I'm really happy to hear that." At home, Emily had changed, too. She still played restaurant, but now with real ingredients, preparing little snacks for everyone. Her smile, always present, seemed even brighter, and her colorful drawings now showed a happy family: herself, Lily, Rachel, and more often, Jack. The relationship among the three, Jack, Rachel, and Emily, grew quietly with every visit, every conversation, every shared meal. There were no grand declarations or lavish promises, just mutual respect and a genuine affection that developed naturally. For Jack, these visits became the high point of his week. In his large, empty apartment, he often found himself thinking of the simple coziness of their home, Emily's genuine excitement at seeing him arrive, Rachel's quiet strength in facing each challenge with dignity and determination. Rachel, in turn, blossomed in her new role. Financial security not only let her provide better care for her daughters, but also allowed her to rediscover her own self-confidence. She went back to studying, taking night courses in management to enhance her professional skills. "They talk about you all the time," Rachel mentioned one night when Jack stayed for dinner. The girls were already asleep, and they were sharing a cup of tea in the small kitchen. "Especially Emily, you've become part of her family." Jack felt something stir inside him. "You two have become part of my life as well, in a way I never imagined." Rachel studied him for a moment with that penetrating look that seemed to see beyond appearances. "You know what impresses me most about you, Jack? It's not that you tried to fix a mistake, it's that you really changed. I see it in how you treat the store employees, in the small adjustments you're implementing at the company." Jack had never thought of it that way, but Rachel was right. His encounter with Emily and her empty lunchbox had transformed not just his actions but his perspective on life. "I still have a lot to learn," he admitted. Rachel smiled, a warm smile that lit up her entire face. "We all do." That night, when he left the apartment, Jack knew something fundamental had shifted in his life. The truth had been revealed, not just to Rachel but to himself, and from the ashes of that painful discovery, something new and genuine was beginning to bloom. A new beginning, built not on lies or guilt, but on honesty and mutual respect, a chance for redemption, not just for him but for everyone involved. And it all started with an empty lunchbox and a little girl who refused to let tough circumstances wipe the smile from her face. The aroma of fresh bread and tomato sauce filled the small apartment when Jack knocked on the door that Sunday morning. 3 months had passed since Rachel began working at the new Turner Market store, and a lot had changed in their lives. Rachel opened the door with a warm smile, wearing a simple apron over casual clothes. Her hair was pinned in a relaxed bun, a few strands framing her face. There was a lightness about her that Jack was still getting used to, a quiet confidence that grew every week. "Right on time," she said, stepping aside so he could enter. "Emily is so excited. She hasn't stopped asking when you'd get here." Jack walked in, carrying a small paper bag. "I brought dessert, nothing fancy, just some sweets from a bakery near my place." "You didn't have to," she replied, but her smile showed she appreciated the gesture. The apartment was the same, but it felt different. Small new touches, some colorful cushions on the sofa, pictures on the walls, new curtains, made the space even cozier. They weren't expensive items, just careful choices that reflected a newly found financial stability. "Jack!" Emily's enthusiastic voice came from the small open-concept kitchen. She ran toward him, wearing a tiny apron that matched her mom's. "You really came. Come see, I'm helping with the pasta." Jack crouched down to receive her hug, a ritual that had become routine between them. I wouldn't miss it for the world, and judging by the smell, it's going to be the best pasta in town. Emily grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the kitchen. I stirred the sauce, and I put the cheese in. Mom let me cut the tomatoes, too, with a real knife. Under my supervision, Rachel added, smiling as she followed them. The small kitchen was bustling with activity. Lily, seated in her high chair, played with modeling clay at a little table, creating colorful shapes while watching her sister and mother cook. "What can I do to help?" Jack asked, genuinely wanting to participate. Rachel seemed about to say it wasn't necessary, as usual, but stopped herself. "You can make the salad. The ingredients are already set aside." Jack took off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, feeling comfortable in the tight space where three people moved in near-perfect coordination. Emily narrated every step of the pasta-making process with the intensity of someone hosting a cooking show. "We used to do this every Sunday at our old apartment," she told him as she sprinkled more cheese on the pasta. "But then it got hard, because my mom worked a lot and didn't have money to buy the good stuff. Now we do it again." Rachel and Jack exchanged a glance over Emily's head, a look full of unspoken meaning. Children's simple honesty often revealed more than lengthy adult conversations. "And what's the best part of cooking?" Jack asked, trying to divert from the emotional moment he saw in Rachel's eyes. "Eating afterward," Emily replied, prompting laughter from everyone. Food prep continued amid stories and laughs. Rachel described her early kitchen disasters when trying to impress Emily's grandmother. Jack shared memories of the time he tried to cook dinner to impress his first girlfriend and nearly set his apartment on fire. "You had a girlfriend?" Emily asked with the straightforward curiosity of children. "A long time ago," Jack answered, chopping tomatoes for the salad. "Why don't you have one now?" Emily pressed on. "Emily," Rachel gently scolded. "That's very personal." Jack smiled. "It's okay. Maybe I never found the right person. Or maybe I was too busy working to notice when I did." His eyes met Rachel's for a moment, and something unspoken passed between them before they both looked away, slightly embarrassed. When they finally sat down at the table, the simple meal felt like a banquet. Homemade pasta with fresh tomato sauce, a crisp salad, still warm bread, and some roast chicken Rachel had prepared earlier. Nothing fancy or expensive, but made with care and affection. "Can we say thanks?" Emily asked, extending her hands to her mom and Jack. Rachel nodded, holding Lily's hand with one of hers and Emily's with the other. Jack completed the circle, holding hands with both girls. The gesture was new to him, but strangely comforting. "Thank you for the food," Emily began with ease, "for the tasty pasta, for my family, for my mum who smiles more now, for Lily who's learning to talk better, and for Jack, who came into our lives and made everything better." Jack felt a lump in his throat. The simplicity and sincerity of those words struck him with unexpected force. The meal flowed naturally, like a family accustomed to sharing moments. Lily made a little mess with her pasta. Emily talked about school and her friends. Rachel discussed the challenges and successes of her managerial position. Jack shared stories from his childhood that he had never told anyone before. At some point, Jack realized he was laughing more than he had in years. There was a lightness to that Sunday lunch, a sense of belonging he'd never felt before, not even with his own family. When they finished eating and the children left the table to play, Jack helped Rachel clean up, working in a comfortable silence that didn't need filling. "Thank you for coming," Rachel said at last, putting away the last dishes. "It means a lot to the girls." "And to you," Jack ventured, risking a level of honesty he usually avoided. Rachel smiled, open and genuine. "It means a lot to me, too." Later, as they all settled into the small living room to watch a movie Emily had picked out, Jack found himself looking at the faces around him. Rachel, relaxed and smiling. Emily, leaning against his shoulder with the trust of someone who feels safe. Lily, dozing on her mother's lap. For the first time in a long while, maybe for the first time ever, Jack felt like he truly belonged. Not as part of a family obligation or a business commitment, but part of a genuine connection born out of the most unexpected circumstances. Emily looked at him and smiled, her eyes filled with that innocent wisdom only children have. "I'm glad you came into our life, Jack," she said softly, as if sharing a secret. Jack smiled back, unable to put into words how much that simple family had transformed his own life. "Me too, Emily," he finally answered. "Me too." Fall was painting the trees around the school in shades of gold and red. Rachel adjusted her scarf as she waited for Emily to get out of class. The cool breeze ruffled her hair, but she barely noticed. Her thoughts were on her daughter and on how much their lives had changed over the past few weeks. Her new work schedule allowed her to pick up Emily from school 3 times a week, a simple luxury she couldn't afford before. As manager of the new Turner Market store, Rachel had the flexibility to arrange her agenda. It still felt odd, that new status, this new life. Sometimes she needed a few seconds upon waking to remember she no longer had to run between different cleaning jobs all day. Leaning against her modest car, recently purchased with her savings, Rachel observed other parents who, like her, were waiting for their children. Not long ago, she would have been the last to arrive, exhausted after a full day's work, often missing the chance to chat with teachers or other parents. Now, she was here, right on time, feeling part of that community. The bell rang, and soon the schoolyard was filled with the cheerful chatter of children. Rachel smiled as she spotted Emily leaving the building, proudly carrying her lunchbox, now always full, and chatting animatedly with a friend. "Hi, Mom," Emily ran toward her, eyes shining. "I've got something to tell you." Rachel crouched to hug her. "What is it, my love?" "My teacher cried today because of my lunch." Rachel frowned in confusion. "She cried? What do you mean?" Emily adjusted her backpack, taking on that serious expression she used whenever she recounted something important. "She saw the note you put in my lunchbox and got teary. Then she hugged me and said I was a lucky girl." Rachel felt warmth rising to her cheeks. That morning, she'd tucked a simple note in Emily's lunchbox. "Hope you like it. Love, Mom." A small gesture, almost trivial for many families, but it meant everything to them. "She asked us to show what we had in our lunchboxes so we could talk about healthy eating," Emily continued as she got in the car. "When I opened mine, she saw the sandwich cut into a heart shape and the note. She read it out loud, and then her voice got weird. Rachel smiled as she started the car. Miss Jenkins, Emily's teacher, knew their story well. She had seen Emily's empty lunchbox during those difficult times and had witnessed the restaurant game Emily invented to cope with it. "How did you feel, honey?" Emily thought for a moment, fiddling with the latch on her lunchbox. "Happy and a little proud, because now everyone knows my mum makes the best lunches and writes the best notes." Rachel reached out and gently squeezed her daughter's hand, feeling a lump in her throat. Simple gestures, small things, a sandwich, a note. For many, nothing special. For them, a daily victory, a silent sign that they had overcome the darkest days. On the way home, they passed by the new Turner Market store where Rachel worked. Emily looked out the window, pointing excitedly. "Can we visit Jack today?" "Not today, sweetie. He's at an important meeting in another city, remember? But he'll be coming to dinner on Friday." Emily nodded, satisfied with the answer. Jack's presence had become as natural as sunrise in their lives, no longer a surprise, but a comforting certainty. At home, while Rachel prepared a snack for Lily, who was playing with colorful blocks in the living room, Emily approached with a thoughtful expression. "Mom," she said after a moment of silence, "Ms. Jenkins said there'll be a special presentation next week. Each student will talk about something important to them. I want to talk about the restaurant." Rachel paused what she was doing, giving her daughter her full attention. "Which restaurant, honey?" "Mine. The empty lunchbox restaurant." Emily spoke with total ease, no trace of shame or sadness. "I want to tell everyone how we used to pretend when there wasn't any real food, and how things are different now. Ms. Jenkins said it's an important story." Rachel felt her heart race. It was surprising how Emily could discuss that difficult time with such maturity, turning a potentially painful memory into something valuable. "Are you sure you want to talk about it in front of everyone?" Emily nodded confidently. "Yes, and I want you and Jack to come watch." "Jack, too. He's part of the story, isn't he? He was the first one who saw my restaurant and asked for an imaginary sandwich." Rachel couldn't disagree. Jack had come into their lives because of that empty lunchbox, and now it was impossible to imagine a future without him. "I'll invite him, then," she promised, going back to preparing Lily's snack. But her mind was now filled with thoughts of how drastically life had changed in the last few months. That night, after the girls were asleep, Rachel called Jack. He was in another city for a conference on corporate social responsibility, a new interest he'd developed over the last few months. "Emily wants you to come to her school presentation," Rachel explained, sitting on the small balcony of their new apartment, gazing at the city lights. "She's going to talk about the lunchbox restaurant." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "She isn't embarrassed to talk about it?" Jack finally asked. Rachel smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "No, for her, it's just part of the story, something that happened, and something we overcame together." "Together," Jack repeated softly. It's amazing how she turns something potentially painful into a positive lesson. She's always been like that. Even in the hardest times, Emily found a way to see beauty, to create something special. Rachel paused, feeling a warm comfort in talking about her daughter. "Maybe that's why she touched you so deeply the first time you met." "She changed my life," Jack replied simply. "You both did." Those words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Rachel's heart sped up slightly. "So, will you come to her presentation?" she asked, returning to the original topic. "I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it." The week flew by. Rachel used her day off to help Emily prepare her presentation. Together, they organized pictures of the original lunchbox, decided what Emily would say, and practiced a few times. The ease with which Emily spoke about those tough times both surprised and moved Rachel. Jack returned from the conference on Thursday and spent Friday night with them, listening to Emily rehearse her presentation one last time. Sitting on the small living room couch, with Lily asleep on his lap, Jack watched Emily with admiration that warmed Rachel's heart. The day of the presentation finally arrived. The classroom was decorated with colorful posters and flowers for the special occasion. Parents and guardians crammed themselves into tiny chairs meant for children, creating a nearly comical scene of adults squeezed into miniature seats. Rachel and Jack sat together at the back of the room, trying to ignore the curious looks from other parents. Jack's regular presence in Emily's life had inevitably sparked speculation within the small school community. "I'm nervous," Rachel whispered, smoothing the simple but elegant dress she'd chosen for the event. Jack smiled, a smile seemingly reserved for her alone. "It's going to be great. Emily is great." Ms. Jenkins began the event, explaining that each student would talk about something meaningful in their lives, a person, an object, a memory. The presentations started, with kids going up one by one to the makeshift stage at the front of the room, talking about pets, vacation trips, and favorite toys. When it was Emily's turn, Rachel felt Jack reach for her hand and give it a brief squeeze, a silent gesture of support they'd grown accustomed to sharing. Emily looked tiny in front of the audience, but her posture was confident. She held up her old, faded blue lunchbox in one hand and the new, colorful one Jack had given her in the other. "My name is Emily Miller, and I'm going to talk about how food is a form of caring." The simplicity and depth of that opening statement caught everyone off guard. For such a small child, it was an extraordinarily profound observation. "This is my old lunchbox," Emily continued, lifting the worn object. "Before, we didn't have much money, and sometimes it stayed empty. But my mom taught me to pretend it was a restaurant." Rachel felt her eyes burning. Next to her, Jack sat still, absorbing every word. "I used to pretend to serve food to other kids. It was fun, and that way nobody knew I didn't have real lunch." Emily smiled, without a hint of self-pity. "My mom would write me notes, promising that soon we'd have real food again. She always kept her promises, even if it was just a little bit of bread." The room was completely silent. Some parents looked uncomfortable, perhaps confronted with a reality they preferred to ignore. Others were visibly moved. Miss Jenkins watched with tears threatening to spill. "One day, a man came to the school and asked to sit in my restaurant." Emily looked directly at Jack, her face lighting up. "It was Jack. He was my first real customer. He pretended to eat my imaginary food and came back the next day with a new lunchbox filled with real food. Jack looked down, visibly emotional. Rachel gave his hand a gentle squeeze. Now my mum has a good job, and our life changed. My lunchbox is always full. Emily held up the new, colorful one. But I still play restaurant sometimes, because I learned that food isn't just to kill hunger, it's a way to show you care. Emily paused, scanning the audience with a seriousness far beyond her few years. When someone makes food for you, they're saying, I care about you. When you share your lunch, you're saying, you matter to me. My mom always took care of me, even when we almost had nothing. And now she can show that care with special lunches and loving notes. Rachel could no longer hold back her tears. They ran silently down her cheeks. Jack wasn't doing much better, discreetly blinking away tears. So when you eat today, remember that food is more than just food. It's care, it's love, it's family. Emily smiled, concluding simply, that's my story. Thanks for listening. The applause that followed was warm and genuine. Emily gave a small bow before returning to her seat, obviously proud of her presentation. Rachel looked at Jack, seeing he was just as moved as she was. Something in the simplicity of Emily's message, in the honesty of her words, had touched everyone in the room. Without meaning to, they exchanged a look of mutual understanding, one that said more than words could. When the session ended and the kids were released for a brief reception in the courtyard, several parents approached Rachel, offering kind words and admiring looks. Emily's story had touched the community in a way Rachel never expected. Your daughter is amazing, said one mother Rachel only knew in passing. Such maturity, such wisdom. Thank you, Rachel replied, still emotional. She's always been like that, finding light even in the darkest moments. Jack stayed by her side throughout the reception, a calm and reassuring presence. Their interactions did not go unnoticed, shared smiles, natural closeness, the way they seemed to orbit each other even while talking with other people. Ms. Jenkins approached, holding Emily's 2 lunchboxes. She asked me to keep both, the teacher explained. She said they're both important to her story. The woman hesitated before adding, in my 20 years of teaching, I've seen many children go through hardships, but very few have Emily's ability to turn adversity into something beautiful. Rachel nodded, speechless with pride. She looked over her shoulder, searching for Emily, and saw her at the center of the courtyard, surrounded by classmates, probably sharing more about her restaurant. Even from a distance, Rachel could see the sparkle in her eyes, the confidence in her gestures. I think I learn more from her than she does from me, Rachel commented quietly. Jackie, who had joined them, smiled. I agree. Emily has a wisdom most adults never reach. Ms. Jenkins glanced from one to the other, a small smile on her lips. You make a lovely family, she said, before moving on to greet other parents. The word family lingered in the air between them. Neither spoke about it, but both felt its weight, its promise, its truth yet to be fully expressed. Driving back home, with Emily asleep in the back seat after the excitement of the day, Rachel and Jack spoke in hushed voices. Would you like to have dinner with us tonight? Rachel asked. Emily mentioned she wants to cook something special to celebrate her presentation. I'd love to, Jack replied. I need to stop by my apartment to grab some documents, but I can be at your place in an hour. When they arrived at the apartment, Emily woke up energized after her quick nap. Discovering that Jack would return for dinner, she insisted on making something special. I want to make macaroni and cheese. Can I, Mom? It's super easy. You just need to help me with the stove, Emily said, already taking off her school uniform and changing into casual clothes. Rachel agreed, charmed by her daughter's enthusiasm. They spent the next hour in the kitchen, preparing a simple meal with love. Lily, awake from her own nap, sat in her high chair, helping by stirring her own bowl of pretend ingredients. When Jack arrived, he was greeted by the inviting smell of homemade cooking and the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. He paused at the entrance, watching the domestic scene, Rachel stirring something on the stove, Emily hopping at her side giving instructions, Lily gleefully banging a spoon in her little bowl. Jack! Emily exclaimed when she saw him. Right on time! We're making special mac and cheese to celebrate. Rachel glanced over her shoulder and smiled. a smile that warmed Jack from within. "I hope you're hungry," she teased. "Starving," he replied, stepping into the small kitchen. "Need me to do anything?" "You can set the table," Emily instructed. "But it has to be fancy, like in a real restaurant." Jack took that job seriously, arranging the simple table with the care of a maître at a fine dining establishment. He found cloth napkins in a cabinet and folded them into elegant shapes, placing utensils neatly. Emily supervised with approval, occasionally directing him on where to place the cups or how to fold the napkins more precisely. When they finally sat down to eat, the table was transformed, simple yet special. Small candles, found in a drawer, lit the center, and each place setting was thoughtfully arranged. "Welcome to Emily's restaurant," the girl announced formally, taking on the role of hostess. "Tonight's dish is special mac and cheese, made by the chef and her assistant." Rachel smiled at Jack across the table, her eyes shining in the candlelight. There was a comforting intimacy in that moment, a sense of belonging both felt but had yet to name. Emily served the mac and cheese with the intense focus of a professional chef, ensuring each plate got the same amount and topping them with freshly chopped parsley. "To make it look pretty like on cooking shows," she explained. "Before we eat, I want to make a toast," Jack said, raising his glass of water. "To the best presentation I've ever seen, and to the most talented chef I know." Emily blushed happily, raising her own glass. "And to the best customer of my restaurant." Rachel completed the toast. "To family." The simple word echoed around the table, laden with meaning. The glance Rachel and Jack exchanged confirmed a silent understanding, an unspoken promise. The meal was lively, with Emily recounting her favorite moments from the presentation, Lily occasionally chiming in with half-formed words, and Rachel and Jack trading stories about their days. To an outside observer, they looked like any normal family, sharing a meal, laughing together, creating memories. And in many ways, that was exactly what they had become. After dinner, while Emily insisted on showing Jack her latest drawing in the bedroom, Rachel began clearing the table. Through the open doorway, she watched Jack patiently sitting on the floor, admiring Emily's artwork as she explained every detail. The scene was so natural, so right, that Rachel felt a warmth spread in her chest. Out of adversity, something beautiful had taken root, not just financial security or material comfort, but a deep, meaningful human bond. When Jack finally said goodnight late that evening, there was a moment at the door, just a brief instant, where everything seemed possible. Rachel felt his gaze linger on her lips, saw his slight inclination forward, then his respectful, hesitant retreat. "Thank you for dinner," he said quietly. "It was perfect." "Anything made with love tastes good," Rachel replied, echoing Emily's words from her presentation. Jack smiled, understanding the reference. "See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow," she affirmed. After closing the door, Rachel returned to the kitchen to finish cleaning. On the table, she found the napkin Jack had used, folded carefully into a heart shape. Underneath it, a hastily scribbled note that read, "Food is love, family is strength. Thank you for letting me be part of it." Rachel tucked the note into a kitchen drawer, along with the other little treasures she collected, Emily's drawings, Lily's early scribbles, and now this scrap of paper symbolizing a new beginning, a new possibility, a future once deemed impossible. Simple things, little things, notes in lunchboxes, family dinners, glances exchanged by candlelight, simple things that turn out to be the strongest of all. Spring skies were a clear, bright blue as Jack parked his car in front of the school. The shade of a blossoming tree protected the vehicle from the early afternoon sun. He glanced at his watch. He was 10 minutes early for dismissal. He'd arrived sooner on purpose, to have a few moments to think. Over the past months, this modest school had become a special place in his life. It was where everything began, where he had met Emily and her little imaginary restaurant. In a way, it was where he himself had been reborn. Jack smiled at how his routine had changed. Beforehand, his days were filled with endless meetings, purely numbers-based corporate decisions, and lonely nights in his luxury apartment. Now, his schedule included Wednesday dinners at Rachel's house, picking Emily up from school on Mondays and Thursdays, and even attending school meetings. His life had gained a purpose beyond the Turner name, beyond the family business, beyond gathering wealth and power. Rachel and her daughters had shown him a world where small gestures carried deep meanings, where genuine human connections mattered more than material achievements. The distant sound of the school bell broke his reverie. Jack got out of the car and walked toward the gate, joining the other parents and guardians waiting there. Some greeted him warmly, his regular presence no longer raised eyebrows. Soon, the schoolyard filled with the vibrant energy of kids pouring out of classrooms. Jack looked for Emily among the sea of matching uniforms, finally spotting her as she emerged from the main building. She spotted him immediately, her face breaking into a radiant smile. She ran toward him, backpack bouncing, her dark hair in the same slightly messy side braid as always, a bit undone after a day of classes. "Jack, you made it," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him in the complete abandon that only children muster. "As promised," he replied, lifting her briefly before setting her down. "How was your day?" Emily adjusted her backpack and took Jack's hand as naturally as if they'd been doing it her whole life. "It was awesome. I got a good grade on my math test, and my teacher used my drawing to decorate our door." She paused, as if suddenly remembering something important. "And guess what else happened?" "What?" asked Jack, genuinely curious, as they made their way toward the car. "I shared my lunch with Mia today. She never brings anything, and so I said she could have half of mine. Like you did for me once." Jack felt his chest tighten. He stopped in mid-step, gazing at this tiny child whose heart seemed bigger than her whole body. The simplicity of her gesture, her spontaneous generosity, the natural way Emily turned her own difficult past into empathy, all of it moved him deeply. "That was really kind of you, Emily," he said, his voice slightly choked. Emily shrugged, as though it were no big deal. "Mia's nice, and my mum's sandwich was too good not to share. It had melted cheese and everything." As they continued to the car, Jack glanced over the schoolyard. His newly aware eyes noticed details he might have missed before: a girl quickly hiding an empty lunchbox so her friends wouldn't see, a boy sitting alone, pretending not to be hungry, another child watching sadly as classmates ate. How many more Emilys were here? How many other empty lunchboxes? How many imaginary restaurants opened every day in that yard? In the car, Emily chatted happily about school, about Mia, about a science project she was working on. Jack listened, responded, asked questions, but part of his mind was racing in another direction. An idea was forming, growing more concrete with every block they passed. When they reached the front of Rachel's building, Jack made an impulsive decision. "Emily, would you mind if we went back to the school for a few minutes? I forgot to discuss something important with the principal." Emily agreed immediately, always up for a small adventure. "I can show you my new drawing on the classroom door." Back at the school, the courtyard was almost empty. Only a few children stayed for extracurricular activities or were waiting to be picked up. Jack held Emily's hand as they entered the building. "You can go show me your drawing after I talk to the principal, okay? I promise I won't be long." Emily nodded and ran off down the hallway toward her classroom, knowing the route by heart. Jack headed for the principal's office, a new resolve in his step. The secretary recognized him, and after a brief call, said the principal could see him. Jack was led into the familiar office, where Nancy Conrad, the principal, greeted him warmly. "Mr. Turner, what a pleasant surprise. Is Emily all right?" "She's great," Jack answered, taking a seat. "Actually, I'm here about something that involves her and the whole school." The principal leaned forward slightly, showing interest. Jack organized his thoughts, wanting to express exactly what he felt. "Today, Emily told me she shared her lunch with a classmate who didn't have any food. It reminded me of when I shared food with her a few months ago. And it got me thinking." Jack paused, looking the principal in the eye. "How many kids in this school come without lunch? How many feel hungry or ashamed during recess?" Principal Conrad's expression grew more serious. "More than we'd like to admit, Mr. Turner. We have some assistance programs, but resources are limited. And for many families, there's a stigma around asking for help that's as painful as hunger itself." Jack nodded, understanding completely. He had seen that dignified pride in Rachel when he first met her, refusing to show the extent of her struggles. "That's why I'm here. I want to help. Let's provide food for all the children from now on. No one should feel ashamed for not having a lunch, and no one should go hungry." The principal stared at him for a moment, as if trying to process what she'd just heard. "Mr. Turner, are you talking about—" "A complete meal program," Jack finished. "Breakfast and lunch for every child, every day. No distinctions, no need to single out who can or can't afford it. Good food, nutritious for everyone." Nancy Conrad adjusted her glasses, visibly moved. "That would be extraordinary. But the cost—" "Turner Markets will provide it all," Jack said firmly. "Fresh, nutritious, varied food. We can start next week if you agree." The idea had emerged impulsively, but the more Jack spoke, the more convinced he became that it was the right thing to do. It was a tangible way to turn his own path toward redemption into something bigger, something that would impact not just Emily but dozens of other children. Principal Conrad still seemed to be absorbing the proposal. "It's very generous, Mr. Turner. We'd need school board approval, but I'm sure—" "Leave that to me," Jack interrupted gently. "I'll prepare a formal proposal with all the necessary details. I have connections on the board who can help speed up the process." Nancy Conrad studied him for a moment, as if seeing something new in his face. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Turner?" The question was simple yet profound. Jack thought of Emily's empty lunchbox, of her smile as she served imaginary food, of her generosity in sharing with Mia. He thought of Rachel, fighting to keep her dignity in the worst times. "Because I learned that sometimes the things that seem small, a lunch, a note in a lunchbox, can mean everything to someone. And because I can make a difference." Principal Conrad reached across the desk and clasped Jack's hand. "You have no idea what this means. For them. For us." Jack smiled, this time without guilt, but with purpose. The following week was intense. Jack assembled a team at Turner Markets to develop the program. Nutritionists were consulted, suppliers were contacted, contracts were drafted. Rachel became an invaluable consultant, offering practical insights and a deep understanding of the community's needs. Jack personally presented the proposal to the school board. Leveraging all his influence and powers of persuasion, he was surprised to find that, when the cause was genuine, his business acumen became even more effective. The following Monday, the Lunch for Everyone program was officially launched. A small kitchen was set up on school grounds, equipped with appliances donated by Turner Markets. 2 employees were hired specifically to prepare fresh meals every morning. 3 days later, Jack returned to the school to deliver additional supplies he had promised. Books for the library, art materials, sports equipment that complemented the meal program. He'd insisted that the project be comprehensive, addressing not only physical hunger, but also the hunger for knowledge, expression, and experiences. Walking into the school courtyard, he was greeted by a heartwarming sight. Kids were scattered everywhere, all enjoying the same healthy meals. No separation, no stigma. Laughter filled the air, and there was a new atmosphere, lighter, happier. As soon as Emily saw him, she ran over, her face radiant as ever. "Jack!" "Today the school gave lunch to everyone," she exclaimed, gesturing excitedly to the courtyard. "Now nobody feels embarrassed." Mia smiled. Jack knelt down so he was at her level, feeling a wave of emotion he didn't try to hide. Emily threw her arms around his neck in a spontaneous hug. "You're my best friend," she said softly, with the pure sincerity only children possess. Jack hugged her back, feeling those simple words echo inside him, reaching places he hadn't known existed. "And you're one of the most important people I've ever met," he replied, equally sincere. When Emily went back to play with her friends, promising to show Jack her new drawing before they left, he continued toward the principal's office to drop off the extra supplies. On the way, he passed a newly installed bulletin board in the main hallway. "Lunch for Everyone Project, What It Means to Me," read the title. Below it, dozens of colorful drawings made by the students, one in particular, placed at the center of the board, immediately drew his attention. It showed a little girl with a braid standing next to a tall man holding a lunchbox, surrounded by smiling children. In the corner of the paper, in childish, crooked letters, was written, "Thank you, Jack." The drawing was simple, done with a child's limited technique, but it conveyed an emotion and gratitude that touched Jack deeply. He stood there, just taking it in, absorbing the significance of this little token of thanks. A gentle hand touched his shoulder. Jack turned to see Rachel beside him, smiling that smile that had become an anchor in his life. "The principal called me after you left yesterday. I asked for a few hours off today to see the program in action," she explained. "This is incredible, Jack. What you've done, I have no words." Jack looked at the board again, at the cheerful faces drawn by the kids. "I didn't do it alone. The idea may have been mine, but the inspiration..." He turned to Rachel. "The inspiration came from you all." They stood side by side in silence, gazing at the drawings. They didn't need words to express what they were feeling. They had become part of each other's lives in ways neither could have imagined that first day with an empty lunchbox. Silently, honestly, maybe forever. Across the hallway, Emily watched them with a knowing smile, as if aware of a secret the adults were just discovering. In her backpack, she kept the note her mom had placed in her lunchbox that morning. "We have something today, and you'll share, but only share the lunch. The love is all yours." But Emily knew the truth. Love never shrinks when shared. Like the lunch she'd shared with Mia, or the food now given to everyone, love only grows when freely offered. Tomorrow, there will be more. And today, there was more too. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.